Hi, I'm Amanda Allen with Stress Free Aging, and I have a special guest here today, James Feeney. We thank you for being here.
Hi, Amanda.
We have worked together here in the senior living industry. You do something a little unique. There are several real estate agents out there. So we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of dialing this down, just bringing it down to specifying specifically for seniors. We're going to talk about senior living, selling your home, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So first I want to ask you, why did you get into real estate?
So I got into real estate in 2012, kind of on the back end of real estate through a title company. Worked there for about 2 years, and early in 2014, I decided to get my real estate license, and kind of piddled for a couple of years, trying many different avenues of real estate. After selling my parents' house in 2016, I realized there was a need for real estate that helps seniors when they have to sell their last house. Because, as we know, seniors accumulate a lot of stuff over the course of their life. A lot of times you're living in your last house for 20 or 30 years. So early in 2017, I went through National Association of Realtors and I got my designation to become a SRES Realtor. And we'll talk more about what that means later. But that's how I got into real estate. It's a second career for me. I was in automotive marketing for over 20 years and just fell into real estate early in 2012 and love it.
Okay. So what would differentiate you from the thousands and thousands of agents throughout southeastern Michigan? Let me tell you, my sister is actually a real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a little bit different about you than what she does?
Yeah, Amanda, that's a great question. Most real estate agents work with buyers and sellers of all ages. They don't really specialize in a certain niche of real estate. What I do as a senior real estate specialist is I focus on the needs of a senior that has to sell their last house. So it's even beyond what a normal SRES agent does, because SRES, some agents are focusing on people selling their last house. Some agents are focusing on folks downsizing from a huge house to a condo. What I decided, along with my partner Tracy, is to really focus on the last house of people and what's all involved with selling that last house, moving the stuff, figuring out where they're going to live for the rest of their life after they sell that last house, dealing with all the family involved, because it's not just the folks living in that last house, it's the whole family, adult children, the grandkids, the great-grandkids sometimes. So everybody has to be on the same page.
I have, I just want to throw a question out there because in the industry that we're in, I know that things can change very quickly.
Absolutely.
Let's say Grandma had a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Grandpa's already passed away. Grandma had a stroke. She has this big house with all this stuff in it. Where do you come in?
So in that situation, we're probably going to not even be working with the one who just had the stroke. We're probably going to be working with the power of attorney for that family and the siblings, because not just the power of attorney needs to be involved. Yes, they have the legal right to sell that house, but once that person is incapacitated and can't make a decision on their own, you have to have a power of attorney involved. But I learned early on that you can't just work with a power of attorney in that scenario. You have to work with the entire family. And sometimes geographically, the kids are spread out throughout the United States, right? So you really have to get everybody together on a conference call from that point, from the onset, so everybody's on the same page. And that's, I think, a mistake that some realtors make. And I've seen it. I've seen that mistake made by some other realtors that try to do what Tracy and I do. They don't include everybody. And then so-and-so in California, who's not really in Michigan and really close to what's going on, they find out a week before the house is going to be sold. Can you imagine the problems that
has got to
makes that one son or daughter in California feel?
Crazy.
It's a huge mistake that you can make when you're selling senior real estate.
So the dynamics, I think with anything, whatever we happen to do, I work with a senior placement company.
Mm-hmm.
So senior, I work with Senior Care Authority, so we have this placement company that we have patients that are, or we have residents that need to go into an assisted living, but usually before they're making that decision, you come in.
That's a good point. Ideally, we like to talk to a family before it gets to that traumatic part where they have to make a decision quickly, because selling a senior house takes some time. You have to first get rid of all the accumulated stuff, or at least downsize all that stuff. You probably have to make some repairs to the deferred maintenance. A lot of people are living in a huge 2,500, 4,000 square foot home and only living in a quarter of that home. Maybe they're living only on the first floor. Upstairs there's deferred maintenance with the toilets or the electricity, or there's a window that's broken. So early on, that's part of the discussion. We want to make sure that the house is going to pass the inspection. We also encourage the seniors, and this is my personal story here, a lot of seniors, when they get to a certain age, they start getting targeted by certain agents out there that'll pay for the house with cash and say, I'll give you $100,000 for your house, and I'll even take care of all the contents inside, just make it a quick close. We'll close in 2 weeks, right? You know how much money they're leaving on the table when they do that? A lot. Probably more than half of the value of the home is being left on the table when they get suckered into one of those deals. And we know how seniors get taken advantage of all the time in this world.
They do.
So that's one of the key things that we've really learned to work on, is from the onset just building that trust with the senior. Once we build that trust, then they'll rely on us for the referrals that are going to help the process of moving the sale from signing the contract until the end of the closing.
I think this is a good time to explain what does it mean to be a SRES,
Okay.
a realtor, because as we're going through this process, I think that these decisions sometimes they come up very quickly.
Too quick, yeah.
So what's the benefits of dealing with someone?
Well, let me define it first.
Sure.
I think in today's world we overuse acronyms. SRES stands for Seniors Real Estate Specialist. And it's a class that I took, Tracy took, my partner, to really learn all the ins and outs of what it means to work with seniors and all of their special needs, whether it's financial, emotionally, all the family dynamics at that age. We have connections with attorneys and elder law, specifically elder law. We have connections with a lot of different resources, and we've built those referrals up over the past 5 years. We started Senior Realty Experts in 2017.
Okay.
I want to tell a quick story before we move on to your next question. There was a couple that lived in Rochester Hills, and we met with them about 6 months before they really decided they needed to move. And we just made an assessment, figured out how we're going to move all your stuff. Their kids didn't want any of the stuff. Most of the time, the kids, even though mom and dad or grandma and grandpa are saving all of these things like China collections and things, the kids are usually established and they have their own stuff, right? So we have to figure out what to do with everything. But in that scenario, all the kids were out of state. So it was mom and dad were living in Rochester Hills. You had a son in New York, you had a son in Texas, and a son in, I think it was Nevada. So we met with the whole family, we had a conference call, and we figured out this is our plan. Now, they didn't want to move right away, but they just want to kind of meet and be prepared, right?
Right.
So then what happened is, the husband had a stroke and passed away.
Oh, wow.
So then, to what you were saying earlier, things kind of got fast forwarded. So it was just mom, and she was going to move with the son in New York. She was going to move to a retirement community in New York. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we were the boots on the ground, because the kids weren't going to come in to really put their lives on hold for a month or so during that process of selling the house. So they hired Tracy and myself to stage the house, make sure all the repairs were made so that it passed the inspection. And I can't tell you how much of a value that was at the end when they knew that we were going to take care of everything here back in Michigan. A lot of agents aren't prepared. There's over 10,000 agents in Southeast Michigan. There's a lot of agents that aren't prepared for everything that's involved in a sale like that. When you're dealing with mom who was mourning her loss of her husband of 50 years, and really nobody there to take care of things. So that's one story that was really made us feel good. Whenever we do a senior sale like that, it's really rewarding at the closing table. And that's one of my favorite type of real estate. I do more than senior real estate, but it's what my passion is, to help seniors with their needs.
And I think this is a perfect time to ask, who do you partner with to help sell
Mm-hmm.
the real estate, the senior real estate? I know that we've been, we've partnered with different events, and we've been out here again helping the senior community. But one of the questions that I have is, if you have somebody that has all this stuff, what type of partners do you partner with?
So there's people that specialize in organizing properties, like figuring out what to do with the stuff, whether it needs to be sold, donated, thrown in the garbage. They're organizers, and they're also called downsizer companies. Kind of those two types of companies kind of interchange, and a lot of them specialize in helping seniors with what to do with all the accumulated stuff that they, have in their homes. Part of that assessment that is done is to figure out what's going to move with them into their new senior living environment.
Okay.
Most apartments are about 700 square feet, maybe. They're moving from maybe 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. What's going to actually fit into that new living environment for that senior or seniors, if it's husband and wife still. So we've formed some partnerships with different companies that specialize in that. Now, they're usually not called in for that initial meeting.
Okay.
The initial meeting that Tracy and I have with the senior and the senior's family is just to assess the situation, and then we figure out what's needed as far as resources to be brought in. I can tell you it's not always necessary for a downsizing company or an organizing company to come into play, because some seniors have really been purging their stuff over time, so they're really well prepared. They don't need that help.
Can we talk about purging? Because
Yeah.
if you have somebody that's 80 or 90 years old,
Mm-hmm.
they might have a lot of stuff.
They usually do, Amanda. They absolutely do, because that generation, this is another thing that we've come to realize over the past 5 years of doing this type of real estate. Folks born in the 30s, they were born during the Depression.
Okay.
Did they throw out anything when they were kids? Well, they still don't throw anything out when they're in their 80s and 90s. Everything has value to them. So that is it's almost like a psychological thing at that point, to just explain to them, you really don't need this stuff anymore.
When is an appropriate time to start doing that purging? What do you have a specific age that you think that it's to start downsizing or minimizing?
I don't think there's really a set age for that. I think that everybody should take time to declutter, because we as Americans, we accumulate a lot of stuff. There's statistics saying that we have the most storage units by far, like 50 times more than other countries. All these storage communities.
And they're growing. Have you ever noticed how many brand new storage companies are coming up?
Great point. Because we have too much stuff in America. So, and why did we collect it? Why do we keep this stuff? If you're not using it on a daily basis, there's really no reason to keep it, in my opinion. But we like to have things, and we like to shop, and we like to get, not just one of something, but 10 of something. Right?
That is so true. Can you tell me what areas in southeastern Michigan do you work with, and where, and where do your clients come from? What areas?
So, first off, my office is Brookview Realty. I own the brokerage with my partner Tracy. It's in downtown Rochester.
Okay.
And we work primarily with clients throughout Oakland, Macomb County, a little bit of Wayne County too. Where do our clients come from? They come from referrals from people who are interacting with seniors on a daily basis, and word of mouth. We don't do a ton of advertising because it's really hard to advertise to seniors. You can't just put an ad in the paper or this and that. A lot of times they can't read a paper anymore, or things like that. People like placement agencies give us referrals. Placement agencies are companies that find the perfect home for the next stage in senior's life. Usually a independent community, assisted living.
What
memory
about,
care.
I walked into a senior center, I'm just gonna say Chesterfield because
Okay.
I've been there and I love my Chesterfield family over there.
Mm-hmm.
I saw probably 150 seniors in there. Is that a good place to maybe have an educational
So that-
forum?
That is a good place, but usually they're not ready to sell their last house.
Okay.
And as I said at the top, we really are micro niche realtors, Tracy and myself. We like to sell the last house and help through the process on that. The folks that go to a senior center for companionship, for recreation, for things like that, they're not at that level of their life yet. So they're still active seniors, right?
Right.
At that age. So maybe they're going to downsize from a big home to a smaller home, but they're not selling their last house. And that's what really I'd like to specialize in and have specialized in, just selling that last house. Not to say we can't help a downsizer.
Right.
Sure.
I have a question. What time frame? What is a good time frame to contact you if you were thinking about downsizing and getting to that place to sell a home? What type of time frame are we looking at?
At least a year before you have to sell, because it takes a ton of time to go through all the stuff in a home that you've owned for 20, 30 years.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a year, but I would say the earlier the better. If you're thinking about, selling, in 23, it's not too early to contact us to set a meeting with us. We obviously, we need to have that meeting at the house because we need to assess what's going on in the house. They can tell you, over the phone, but until you see it and see how much stuff is there, see how full the basement is, see how full the garage is, the cupboards, the cabinets, it's amazing how much stuff can fit in a house. It really is. Mm-hmm.
So true. One last question before we wrap up, and this is just out of curiosity because I know that in some of the industry that I've worked with here, we come across hoarders. Can you speak? Do you ever have any issues with that sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes we do get called in on a hoarder situation, and it's a disease, number one.
Mm-hmm.
It's the extreme of what I talked about earlier, where folks born in the 30s can't throw anything out. A hoarder is going to keep garbage in their home, going to keep piles and piles of papers, keep boxes of stuff so that you can't even walk safely through a house. It's generally going to be unclean and maybe even a hazard, like hazmat situation.
Okay.
So that's a special situation where, it's going to take a long, long time before that house is ready to sell. And it takes some special people really to get in there, because the hoarder person doesn't want to move. And a lot of times they're embarrassed with how their house looks like. It's tough to even get somebody's permission to enter that home, because they realize that it is a really unsafe home, and they know that if they have to move, then they have to kind of totally redo their life. I ran across a situation about 2 years ago where a woman lived in a condo in Troy, and her sister wanted her to move to a independent community in Troy.
Okay.
So they called me out to see the property, and they didn't have the owner of the house there when I went in there. I think she had already moved to the retirement community, but I could only be in the house for about 10 seconds before I had to come out, because the smell was just overpowering, and I didn't have you almost needed a gas mask. That's how bad it was, Amanda.
Wow.
But this woman had been living in this environment for I don't know how many years. And finally her sister said, "Oh my God, my sibling is going to die in this condo if I don't do something."
Right. Right.
So that's really an extreme hoarder situation.
There's so many, there's so many resources that we can give people out here. Can you, how can somebody contact you? Because we're wrapping up now. I'd like to just bring that resource out to the community and what you do. How can they contact you?
So my phone number is 201-5193. That's my cell number, and if I'm not sleeping, I'm answering my cell number. I think most realtors will tell you that, that they work all hours.
They work all hours. There you go.
But yeah, again, my number is 586-201-5193. I do have a website, brookviewrealty.com. The second website for the senior business is seniorrealtyexperts.com.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of information like on our seniorrealtyexperts.com website because, you know, we want them to meet the people and we want to provide the resources based on the actual situation where we meet them. So that's what, and like I said, our office is in Rochester. We work throughout the area. I just, you know, one more thing I want to say, and we didn't touch on this earlier a little bit. I personally believe in age in place. I do. I don't push real estate if it doesn't make sense. But if you have one person living in a house, because maybe the husband passed away or the wife's passed away, and they're living in an unsafe house because they can't manage the stairs, for instance, or manage the cleaning of the house by themselves because it's a huge house, and they don't have the help. We found situations where laundry is still in the basement and they're 85 years old trying to go up and down doing the laundry. So that's probably not a safe house for that senior to live in anymore, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I have a passion for hoping that people don't live in an unsafe home. But I do realize that aging in place does make sense in a lot of ways.
It does make sense, but that's where just what you said is that many people come to me during something of that very thing where maybe they fell down the stairs and broke a hip. They did, you know, there's a lot of accidents that happen with our elderly thinking that they can do more than what they can do.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a difficult time.
It is. They feel like they're giving up their home, their independence, a lot of that when they move out of their last house.
And one last question. The children that are taking care of aging parents, what can they do to encourage and not force or push a loved one to sell their home?
I think the best answer I can give for that is that they talk to a third party that's not emotionally involved in the situation, like myself or my partner Tracy.
Okay.
Because I found that, and you can probably relate to this, if the kids are trying to tell mom and dad or grandma and grandpa to move, they're not as likely to listen to them. But if they talk to a third party, an expert that knows how to do it and knows how to gently handle the situation, we have more success that way.
Thank you. I thank you so much for being on the show. It's exciting. We have much work to do, more education to do out there.
Absolutely.
And if anybody's interested, make sure you contact James for in the future here.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Amanda.
Have a great day.